Hey folks, thank you so much for being patient with me. I'm in the middle of moving, as you know. That's why I don't have any lights set up except for my iPhone that I'm using right now. So I'm going to keep pumping these episodes out. These were all recorded last month. I don't really have anything else to announce other than I will be speaking at the Server Side Swift conference. I'll post a promo code to the show notes, and that's it. All right. Enjoy this episode with Damian. Bye. Welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dion. Today, I'm joined by Damian Mehers. Damian, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Um, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about your app, The Life and Death of Voice in a Can. We've done a couple of episodes where people have shut down apps or sold off apps. We infamously did our episode with Christian about Apollo, but I'm really interested in talking about Voice in a Can and how that whole ecosystem panned out. But before we get into that, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So, I've been programming since I was 14 years old on my 1K ZX81, 1981. I'm 57 years old now. Seen the industry change rather a lot. I've started programming in BASIC, Ada, C++, C Sharp, and Java as well. And now I'm doing a combination of Swift and Swift UI in my own time and a lot of .NET in my day job. So, and I live just outside of Geneva in Switzerland.
Okay, awesome. How did you said it was a Z. What do you have experience with outside of the Apple space in
Oh,
your
yeah,
whatever 40 years of
sure.
programming?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I started programming on these kind of 8-bit computers, the Z80 6502, and
Okay.
that was when I got my start. And I'm pretty convinced that sitting in front of my BBC computer at the time, trying to crack the copy protection on games, that was actually not because I wanted to get them, to not pay for them, but because I wanted to have infinite lives. But spending hours and hours and hours debugging and decrypting, and disassembling the code, that
That's
kind of taught
awesome.
me how to program because it gave me the sense of the ability to focus for immense quantities of time. Believing that one day you'll actually get what you want to do done. So anyway, that yeah, and but my first kind of serious job was on computers from a company called DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation. As
Yep.
a student, I went to work for them on the Vaxes, and at the time it was amazing when I got that internship. I thought I'd made it because DEC was the second biggest computer company in the world. It was equivalent to
Right.
getting with
Right
Apple now,
after IBM,
and
right?
exactly. But now, of
Yeah.
course, they've gone. So it's a little bit of a warning in the back of my mind. You think you're working with the hotness and the greatness, but you never know.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
focus on Microsoft technology quite a bit as well.
Okay. What do you do right now, if you mind me asking?
Yeah. So until the end of last year, I worked as a consultant at Nestle, which is a big Swiss company, working on mobile apps, Android, iOS, using Xamarin, the replacement, which is .NET MAUI. And now I'm working for a private bank in Geneva again as a consultant, doing .NET MAUI. So in my evenings, I do Swift and Swift UI, and during the daytime, I'm doing C Sharp and .NET MAUI. And it can break my mind a little bit sometimes trying to switch between them. But it's kind of good to have a foot in both worlds and to understand. There's some
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
concepts in the whole thing with async await. That's been there in C sharp for a long time, but what the new model in Swift is something that doesn't exist in C sharp. The runtime or the compile time, I should say. Sorry,
Hmm.
checking. So it's good to see both worlds.
We we talked a few episodes ago. I forgot with who it was about how they're changing the name from Xamarin to .NET MAUI. What is the difference between these two technologies exactly?
Well, Xamarin was the original technology that Miguel de Gaza and Nat Friedman created back in the day. And then Microsoft acquired Xamarin.
Right.
And for a long time, things were looking rosy and great. But then, Miguel left, and so did Nat. He was running GitHub for a while. But I think Microsoft decided they basically wanted to rewrite it. So a lot of the underlying foundations are the same, but
Okay.
but the web rendering for some what was called Xamarin Forms, which is the kind of the UI that will run on both iOS and Android, is kind of being rewritten in Maui.
Okay.
And I mean, the big thing there is really that it's not doing what I think Flutter does, which is to render the UI components themselves. They actually render as native components. So a button
Right.
in
Right.
Maui actually renders as an iOS or an Android real button. But,
Right.
so yeah, so it's a kind of an evolution, if you like.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit
Sure.
about voice in a can. You want to explain what this app does and how you came up with the idea for it?
Yes, does is not quite the right word. What it did, I should say, is
Yes.
anyway. Yeah, it's so the kind of this backstory is I was working at Evernote and I'd just been let go along with the CEO of Evernote, Bill Libin, and we had tea in San Francisco, and we were just talking, and he talked about this new device that was coming out, had just come out, and was kind of taking the world by storm a little bit, which was the Echo, the Amazon Echo. And so he ordered one from Amazon, and the next day I gave him cash, and he gave me the Amazon Echo, just because I'm always interested in gadgets, and understanding. And so I took it home, and most technology that Damian brings home is not well received by the family. But this time it was. It was actually sat in the kitchen, and we used it to play radio. We used to, add items to the shopping list, set timers. So it was actually the rare success in the household that the whole family got on board with. And I was browsing around on the internet. I had a long commute working at Nestle every day, going backwards and forwards, an hour and a half on the train and the bus. So I was looking around to see if Amazon had any APIs, and sure enough, they had an actual, it was called the Amazon Voice Service, which was designed not only for device manufacturers, who wanted to create their own echoes, but they specifically allowed apps as well. So I started playing, trying to basically send an audio recording to their service and get back a response, and on the phone originally, on the iPhone in Xamarin in C#. And eventually I got it working. And Amazon have some very specific requirements, like you can't send audio that you pre-recorded. It's got to be kind of live streaming from the microphone. So I was doing some pretty low-level stuff,
Okay.
to on the audio devices to grab the audio samples and stream them up. And once I got it working on the iPhone, I then there's actually no real point in creating an Amazon client for the iPhone because the actual Amazon app was there, but there wasn't one for the Apple Watch. So I managed to get my code up and running on the Apple Watch as well, because Xamarin was supported on the Apple Watch.
Okay.
So that's, but this was the very first Apple Watch. Maybe the Apple Watch 2 was around then as well. It was very, very slow,
Pre-Swift
tremendously
UI.
slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no Swift UI. No, it was all, well, but fortunately there was very little UI actually. It was mainly
Right.
the engine underneath. So yeah, I got the app actually running on the Apple Watch, but it was horrendously slow because it was very early hardware. But it was, I was kind of delighted, and the nice thing was I was able to reuse a whole engine that I created in C#.
Okay.
On the Apple Watch, on the iPhone, I was able to get it running on the Apple Watch, sorry. And so that was, and eventually I released it, and you never know what's going to happen. But Tom Warren from The Verge picked it up and
Yeah, that's
wrote an
awesome.
article about it, and that was and your wildest dreams come true, and then you realize maybe it was a bit of a nightmare, because the first version is never that great. There are always issues, and so my sales did. I think it made about $3,000 in the first day. And part of me
Wow.
was thinking, "Ooh, I can retire now. I've got, it's going to carry on like this forever." But of course, it didn't. It dropped down to, I think I always paid for my lunch. So $10, $15.
How do you
Sometimes.
monetize it, if you mind me asking?
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, what I did at the time was a one-time purchase of $2.
Yeah.
So that was the model. I don't, it's such a difficult thing to know what the right thing to do is. Generally, if you've got people complaining about the price and people saying it's too low, then you're in the right spot. And I didn't have many people complaining about the price, but I probably could have charged more. But it really wasn't a thing to make lots of money. It was as much a passion project as anything.
Right.
So I did.
Right.
So going today,
What was
maybe I would have done $2 a year or something. But
what was the most? Okay, so did you do this all in C#?
yes, I did it all in C#. Yes, I did
Okay.
initially all in C# until I rewrote it in Swift and SwiftUI. Yeah.
Okay. What? Well, let's talk about that. What was
Yeah.
that experience like, switching from Xamarin and C# over to
Yeah.
Swift?
Well, when after Microsoft acquired Xamarin, they decided they were no longer going to support the Apple Watch for
Oh, okay.
Xamarin. And
Okay.
that was at that point I had, because Xamarin ran pretty much everywhere. I had it running on my Xbox, on my Samsung watches, on Android watches, and
Right.
pretty
Right.
much everywhere you can imagine. But really, all the money, all the intention was coming from the Apple ecosystem. So I decided that it was a good time, because I couldn't create an Apple Watch app anymore using Xamarin. That was a time to rewrite it. And fortunately, Swift UI had just was out by then.
Yeah.
So the experience was, I mean, a complete rewrite of thousands of lines of code. But I'm happy the approach I did in the end, which was to create tests where I basically fed input to my C# engine and captured the byte stream output. And then when I was building the Swift version, I had all these unit tests that I could
Oh
make sure
wow.
that I had backward compatibility. If there was a bug in the old one, it carried on to the new one, but at least I knew byte for byte,
It was the
because you
same
are
thing.
working at a quite low level, that it was working. So it was as much about learning Swift as it was about C# and learning the you know the patterns, if you like, of the new programming language. But eventually, I think .NET's framework libraries, the stuff that just basically comes for free, was much richer than much more evolved, I would say, maybe clearly more mature than the Swift one. So there were some things that I could do. I can't remember off the top of my head, but things I could do in C Sharp, that were built in that weren't quite as easy in Swift. But I got there in the end.
What
The
were
big
one of the things
Yeah.
that you could do in C sharp that you couldn't
I wish
do
I
in
could remember
Swift?
off the top of off the top of my head. Sorry. Um, there's something called link in C Sharp, which is language
Yes.
integrated query, which is
Yep.
really
I
really nice.
remember
And
that.
yeah, and it's not as rich. You've got map and filter, in Swift, but it's not. I guess some of the
Because
operators
basically, what
there.
you could do is you could do like a SQL query on a data structure,
Exactly.
essentially,
Yes. I mean,
and
it
it
was
can figure out
essentially
all the functional programming for you that you would
yes.
essentially have to handwrite in Swift. Yeah, no,
It,
I
it,
know what
it
you mean.
translates into a method chain. It's kind of syntactic sugar. It looks, from blah to select blah.
Like, I would
It
say,
translates
predicates are probably the closest
a
to
little
that.
bit. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. It's
but but a lot more robust, I would say.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been there, I think, since 2008 or something like that. It was a long time that Swift had been there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but at that point, Amazon were releasing something called the Alexa presentation language, which was a UI for the Echoes, for the new Echoes, and I wanted to add that to my new app.
Okay.
And so basically, the way that worked was that the Alexa sent down the Alexa service sent down a JSON structure which describes all the elements and the event handlers and all sorts of stuff. I initially had dreams of implementing my own parser for that, but it's really really rich and therefore complicated. But there was a library from Amazon which I could basically feed in the JSON and it would return back events and the document structure or the tree structure of the UI that I should create.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was written in C++, and at that time there was no Swift to C++ integration. There is now. So I discovered the delights of wrapping C++ calls in Objective C and then calling them it
Yeah.
from Swift. So I did that for basically all the stuff I needed to do, and then essentially I was dynamically generating the Swift UI on the fly, not at compile time, but at runtime, dynamically generating the UI. Maybe the shopping list contains a
Hmm.
frame with you know, um, toggle elements that could be swiped, and then I was actually getting the drag gesture and feeding that back to the Alexa presentation or the Alexa presentation
Okay.
language library, and then getting events back to say shift the UI element across. But it all worked amazingly well, and it worked on the Apple Watch as well. It worked well. So that was So the whole experience was part of it was really just the delight of learning something new in Swift
Right.
and Swift UI, and then also it's true. It's definitely the case that building native, especially if you're working at quite a low level, is easier, than using something like C Sharp and Xamarin.
Um, this watch app, was it like an independent watch app? Was it a companion app?
It
Did
was
you
a
have
it
an
was a
iPhone app component?
yeah. It would no. It was a companion app. I don't know. I think I might. I don't remember if I decoupled it from the watch app from the phone app.
Okay.
but it worked totally independently. I was out for a run, in the middle of the fields with just my Apple Watch, listening to podcasts, and I could add items to my shopping list or turn on my electric blanket, whatever I want to do, using the Echo, voice in a can on my Apple Watch, using the data connection. So
Okay.
it was independent from that perspective.
You also build a Vision OS app. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right. So voice in a can was doing well, and the Apple Vision Pro was announced. I'm sitting in Switzerland. There is no Apple Vision Pro available.
yeah.
I applied a few times for the events that they were holding for developers, but I never got accepted. But still, I had this vision. Forgive the pun, of coming into an office. Like, I'm sitting in a completely new office. I put on my Vision Pro, and I just pick up my virtual Echo and place it on a desk, next to me. And then whenever I want to use it, I just look at it, tap my fingers, it lights up, and I can add things to my shopping list, or turn on my electric blanket, and then my vision was that the UI would kind of pop up from the unfurl from the virtual six cylinder. So I got all this working in the simulator, and it wasn't that complicated a Vision Pro app. It was basically, in terms of the UI, it was a cylinder, that I like. When you look at it, it lights up. I detect the tap gesture, and I change the UI to the cylinder's rim to light up to go blue like the original Echoes did, and start listening. And then I was able to project a Swift UI view. For example, the shopping list. You could scroll the shopping list in the Echo, in the virtual Alexa. Wait, I'm going to set off my Alexa. But and then it would go away. So I got it all working, and in the simulator. Never got a chance to try it out for real until, I don't know, a couple of months ago, when I actually got a Vision Pro. But it was accepted by Amazon. You never know. Sorry, by Apple, it was accepted. You never know. But they accepted it, and so I was there at launch day. So when the developer conference came up and they showed that massive wall of all the app icons for the Vision Pro, over on the far right hand side, half of my icon was visible. Which was
Your head
something.
was poking out. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
yeah.
Speaking of like getting what's the different what's the difference in character between App Store review and and Amazon accepting your Amazon
Yeah.
Alexa app? What's kind
I
of the
was
difference?
Yeah, I was really early when I released my app. So for the Echo, there wasn't an approval process, but I just sailed through. However, and then said they accepted it, and I could, create all my other ones.
Right.
That was never an issue. However, driving home from work one day, got a notification on my phone from something about legal Amazon, blah blah blah. I couldn't look at it, of course. I drove on until I could pull over safely and looked at it, and it wasn't sure enough an email from a lawyer from Amazon with a long checklist of things that they wanted to verify that I was doing. For example, that I wasn't saving the audio locally. All this kind of stuff. But I was playing it by the book, and we exchanged emails backwards and forwards. It started off quite stern, but it got friendly towards the end. And the final thing he said to me was how cool he thought my app was. The lawyer said that, so that was nice. So all in all, I would say it was pretty straightforward from the Amazon perspective. From the Apple perspective, when I had my Xamarin version of the app, I tried to release it for the Mac, and they rejected it, and they said it was, I can't remember what the reason was, basically too generic or something. I can't remember what. When I rewrote it in Swift and Swift UI, I did it for the iPhone, for the Apple Watch, and the Mac, and then again it went through without any problem. So as we know, it depends on the day, the reviewer you
Right.
have,
Right.
and so it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Apple's still is a bit of a, oh, we all know the stories,
Hmm.
it can be a bit
Hmm.
of a, um, you just have to be lucky, I guess.
Right. 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 Yeah. Um, what so you got this email from this lawyer. Were there any other emails or contact you got from customers that made you think, "Wow, I'm really onto something"?
Yes, yeah. Early on, well, the first hint of it was somebody who was blind. I think I put accessibility in there, some voiceover stuff, but I hadn't done a very good job. Somebody who's blind contacted me and were very kind. They gave a, I don't know, 2-star review, but they contacted me, which is the main thing. And I worked with them to get voiceover working really
That's
well
awesome.
as far as I could. So that was that was kind of a little bit of a wake up call that, oh, there's still a fun thing I'm doing on the train going to work every day. maybe it's actually a little bit more meaningful than that, And then I started to get emails, and one in particular still haunts me. Haunts not the right, yeah, maybe haunt is the right word, but it's a guy, stage 4 cancer, a veteran, who's basically thanking me for being able to. I interacted with him a bit to get him to help him, but in the end, he says, I have stage 4 cancer. I'm going to, what did he say? He says, I'm going to fight it or die trying or something. I can't remember. Anyway, it's quite poignant. And he was using my app to control all his home devices, and he had loads of them. So that really changes things from being a fun little thing that's kind of paying my lunch, and eventually it's paying my mortgage. But that really put things into perspective that you don't know,
Right.
how people are going to use what you're doing. And accessibility, everybody says, yes, it's very important, but it really is important. You don't, and you never know how people are going to use what you're doing. So it's not should never be an afterthought. It should be built in from the beginning. And I try to do that now when I create my apps.
That's
Does that answer your question?
amazing. Yeah, no, I'm reading on the webpage what he said about how I'm not a whiz, but I have all these smart devices to help me as the cancer gets worse. So far, I have 29 smart devices installed, which I can control with my voice, iPhone, iPad, and laptop, and now Apple Watch, thanks to you. That's really awesome.
I
just
have
a
to say,
great
I was in
detail.
tears when I read that email. Because,
I would imagine that would be the case. Yeah. It's like we always think these things are like little toys, and then you see somebody actually use it. It's like, why did I think of that? That's amazing.
In retrospect, it was obvious that that the people would be using it in that kind of situation, but at the time, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, if only Siri worked the same way, right?
Just wait for Apple Intelligence. I'm sure it'll be
great. Right. That'll fix everything. Well, it'll fix it for me, not for you, because you're in Europe. That's your problem.
But not in the European Union. I've not actually looked to see. Switzerland isn't part of the European Union, but I don't know if Apple knows that, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So it's going well. Everything's going great.
Yes.
It's all blue sky, right? Like there's nothing.
No, until
what happened?
I think, towards the end of last year, I did get an email from Amazon saying something about not supporting the Amazon Voice service going forward.
Okay.
And I thought, and they assured me that, or it was a general email, but saying that it was going to be still supported. They'd support existing devices. And then I started to get several emails from different people saying that they were getting an internal service error from the Amazon services server when they were using my app, something new. And at that point, and then I looked, and sure enough, all the Amazon Voice Service documentation was gone. It never existed, So as far as so all my links were broken. And at that point, I realized, and it's clear that Amazon are refocusing. They've fired a load of people, and in Amazon, I think $25 billion is the whole thing on the verge about it. They spent on it, and they're really trying to work out how they're going to make money. And clearly, my kind of app isn't their focus anymore. It was. I mean, I visited the Amazon offices, and I met some really nice people there. So there were some good times early on, but it's clear that things have changed, and it just sometimes what the right thing to do is, and it just felt like the right thing to do was to pull it from the App Store before things got worse, even though it was still making enough money to pay my mortgage every month, so it wasn't nothing, but it just felt like things were only going to get worse, and I couldn't in good conscience still sell the app when I knew that things were probably going to go downhill. So I just made the decision to pull the app, and I felt much better afterwards. About doing that. I'm still getting emails from people now saying, oh, are you going to bring it back? What's happening? But I have a form letter now that basically says it just doesn't look very likely. If Amazon decided that they really, we need an Apple Watch app, they reach out to me, I would be absolutely delighted, to work with them but I just want to be sure that the customer experience is as it should be, and I just don't feel right about it now. So.
Right. Yeah. It's. I wouldn't say Amazon is more friendly than Reddit was with Christian, because they kind of pretended like it never existed, which is really weird. Yes. But
it's not really personal.
Go ahead.
They've not. It's not really personal in the sense they don't probably. No, they didn't.
That's
they didn't
true.
Reach out to
the
me
CEO doesn't lie and like
No,
yeah,
exactly.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
I've
is
not been
true.
recording, phone calls with them and playing them back. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's
um,
not quite the same experience. I think I'm just unintended casualty of the
right,
situation.
right, exactly. Um, it's so interesting to me that voice was such a big thing. And things haven't been great for tech this year, and there's a lot of things that are just like kind of getting pulled
Yeah.
or getting taken away and stuff like that. um it's so interesting to see Amazon kind of like, because one of the things I remember people loved about Alexa is the fact that you can build so much on top of it.
Yes.
It was a lot more open, and now it's like, yeah, I do you like, where do you see voice assistants going forward? Because it
Well,
used to be everything was Echo, like, oh, the Echo's amazing, why can't Siri be more like the Echo? And now it's like
yes. I
the
think well,
Echo's dead.
the Amazon ecosystem is still alive in the sense that you can still create skills for it. So you can still
Mm.
plug into to it,
Yeah,
and you
that's
can
true, that is
render
true,
your own
yeah.
UI. My kind of use case creating an engine that kind of used the Amazon Voice Service was a bit different, but yeah, I think we're all waiting to see what the impact is of the GPTs, because they've not really hit the large language models. They've not really hit the Echo yet, although there's talk of it coming. We're waiting for Apple Intelligence. So I think it's a natural fit, and I hesitate to say it'll change everything, but I think it probably will change things, just given my experience using them for programming. Now, of course, programming is a specific use case that's very special, but I still think yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because of the hallucinations. If you're programming, you can see an API doesn't exist that it tells you to use. So it's yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a big change, and I suspect there's going to be a backlash, and there's going to be services and apps that say specifically we don't use LLMs, and that's our feature. We're just a simple, basic, app that doesn't try to make things intelligent that don't really need to be. So,
Right.
but the voices, I mean, I still use the echoes everywhere, and the family still uses them. We use them, for our shopping list, smart home control, and that for me, they're definitely in my use case, in my scenario, they're, they're more powerful than HomeKit, in terms of controlling my devices. So yeah, I think let's see. Ask me in a year's time once the large language models have really had their impact.
Right. And do you think the Apple, or excuse me, the Alexa voice service, is that just something they don't want to maintain anymore, or is it like,
No, well, I don't know for sure, but there's a guy from Microsoft. I forget his name off the top of my head. He was basically left Microsoft. He was the head of Windows like devices. He joined Amazon. He'll come to me as soon as we finish the call. He'll come to me. But anyway, he's clearly been given the remit of making money from them, and turning it into something that makes money. So I think that they're going to. My guess is that they've basically been given one more shot to make money. So they're going to be coming. I think they'll come along with a paid version of Alexa with which will be
with
using the large
LLMs?
language model. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they'll be trying to make money, because the whole thing of, by the way, did you know you could buy toilet paper? All these are things that it came back with. Was really frustrating. I just hear everybody complaining about the, by the way, promise that Amazon, the Alexa came up with. So that way of making money didn't work. So I think they're going to try and I think they're going to have one more shot of making money. But I think the ecosystem is so big and they've sold so many of these devices that it's going to be hard to turn it off for a long time.
Yeah, right, right. Um do you think like do you think there's well, I guess we kind of talked about it being a future of voice assistants. You think those are just going to have to be attached to LLMs of some sort, whether it's Apple Intelligence or
I
Google,
think I think people are going
or
to expect it. They're going to
yeah,
expect the more you're not going to be you're not going to expect to have to phrase your queries in very specific ways, which you
right,
do now. You're going to expect it to understand the context and the gist and the you know. Sometimes I'm programming and I just say to ChatGPT, Swift invert list. That's all I say, and it automatically generates the code for me.
Right.
So it's much more intelligent. Although the Echo, you can say things like 5-minute timer. You don't have to put all the ceremony of please set up blah blah blah.
Right.
It'll work, but I think the large language models are going to change how we interact with those assistants, I think.
Do you have the slightest desire to jump back in and do anything with Alexa,
Not
programming
really,
wise?
no. I've moved on to new shiny things. I jumped onto it when it was a new thing, and I created a skill to let you add notes to Evernote and OneNote, and I created Voice in a Can. But I feel like psychologically I've moved on now. Sometimes when I look back at all that code I wrote for that, for the engine and for parsing the APL and generating the UI, it's all. I should probably open source it or something, but I do have a tinge of nostalgia. But I think the downside, is closing the app and losing the revenue. And I enjoyed interacting with people who had questions about it. But the upside is I free up all my mind. The opportunity cost of is no longer there, and I can do other things. In my commutes.
What before we jump on to what you're working on next, what kind of is your process with shutting down the app per se?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I have actually shut it down in 2 ways. So actually earlier on when I moved to using Swift, I shut down the Samsung app, which was popular. I had a Discord group, with people chatting about it. I was having sales every day, but I shut that down, and I expected it to be the same as Apple, which was it would still be there for people that already bought it. But oh no, it would just disappear from the store, and if you bought it before, you're out of luck. So that experience was tough because I had to tell these people, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. With the Apple one so far, it's been pretty smooth. I like the fact that Apple leave it there for people that have already downloaded it. So all I did was basically flip a switch, double checking everything in the store, and off it went. And then I had to update the website and to explain what had happened. But it's been pretty good. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop in that. Um, I don't know what's going to. I expect that at some point it will break for existing customers, and basically that's when I'm going to get the angry emails. People can't
Yeah.
leave one star reviews anymore because the store's closed. But
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Um. So, what's the plan now, going
yeah.
forward?
I think I said I'm 57 years old, and so I've got all this legacy stuff, services I've used, over the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, from emails, from the 1990s, e-groups, which got bought by Yahoo and turned into Yahoo groups. I have all these things, these exports, and so what I wanted to do was create a integrated on-device app that lets me import exports from tens of different services, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or
Okay.
email or pretty much any service you can imagine, although any service that I've used in the past, um, Last FM, you name it, and
Hmm.
so integrate it all, suck it all in, and show it in an integrated, searchable timeline, so that I could go back on my Apple Photos, my WhatsApp messages, so I can go back to a trip I made with a family, I don't know, in 2012, and I can see the places I was at because I'm importing my Google location history. I can see the emails I sent around that time. I can see the Facebook posts I made, the Apple photos that I have,
Hmm.
all the integrated searchable timeline. So it gives me a way of basically seeing my life, my digital life integrated on
Right.
device, no cloud component. And it's my data, so why shouldn't I be
Hmm.
able to own it and search it, so that I can see I'm connected. So the real scenario is I'm connected to someone on LinkedIn. So I search in my app for that person's name, and I can see the emails I sent, the conference we were at the same time, all this stuff, and now I know how I connected them on LinkedIn. Having said all this, I'm not sure I'm going to release it. I don't know for sure. It's in test flight at the moment. I'm still in two minds as to whether or not to release it, because there is a massive, well, I don't know if massive is the right word, but a significant mental cost to releasing and supporting an app. It's not free.
Right.
Even if the app was free, which it probably won't be, I'll probably charge something for it. There's still the support emails and so on. And
How
so
about
it's
like
not
open sourcing parts of it?
that's true. Yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, I could do that.
Right.
But it's a tricky thing, and yeah, it's a responsibility, to release something. And so I want to be sure
Right.
that it's something I really want to do. I've got, I know, just under 100 test flight users, but yeah. So we'll see if I actually release it or not. But the test
What's the
flight's
name of it?
available.
I don't think.
So the name is Ploze, Ploze. It means absolutely nothing. It's just one of those domains that we all have that we don't know why we registered them, but we have
Yeah.
it. And so
Yeah. No, I get it.
ploze.com. You can see a video, you can download the test flight, and I'll be absolutely delighted to get any feedback anybody has about it.
Awesome. We'll put a link in the show notes for
Thanks.
folks.
I am thinking about plugging in a local large language model as well. So you can
I was about
it.
to ask that. Yeah, that's the next thing.
Yeah, having said all that stuff about the feature being no LLM,
when you leave
sense.
this world, that way people can talk to you even when you're dead, right? So
yeah, well, kind of, but also, yeah. No, I think I have somebody from my family, my father, passed away recently, and it does strike me that it would be a good way to to be able to pull together someone's legacy, put it in and have all of his emails and photos and all the stuff, so it's, in one place that you can
Have you
search.
ever read those stories about people who they import the emails and text messages to their late partner or whatever, and then it gets really creepy.
Things they didn't want to know.
Yeah.
No. There was the Black Mirror episode where
there was but it's been done in real life. Not like buying a robot or anything. You're not getting whatever. Your boyfriend back ordered from Amazon or anything. But there is LLM. There's been articles I've read about girlfriends talking to their dead boyfriend because they
that's not something I'm interested in, but I am interested in being able to query it. Because the quantity of data is so massive, it's gigabytes. I mean, because my Gmail archive is 30 gigabytes. I would have to use retrieval augmented generation to do a local search to pull in useful information and then do the LLM query on that, because unless the context window gets enormous, I'm not going to be able to have all of the data in the context.
Right.
So it is something I'm thinking about, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's gonna be a thing. That's gonna be a thing.
Yeah, I suspect so.
If there's a VC that's willing to spend money on it, it'll be there. That's cool. Go ahead.
I just remember Phil Libin, the former Evernote CEO, was saying, people are offering crazy amounts of money for Evernote, but then you end up with a crazy amount of money, crazy guy or lady on the board, and so it's the same with this, VCs. If they're offering kind of crazy money, you're dealing with a crazy person.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to be careful.
Anything else you want to talk about, Damian, before we close out?
One final thing I would just say, and this is people creating apps in general, and also people who are using apps, is it's really, really easy to get upset with the app developer, and then return with the customer. And the 1-star review would leave 0 stars if I could. I wrote a blog post about it, and I think it pays to be kind and to be to try and put yourself in the shoes of the person, empathic with the person you're dealing with, and assume the best. So even if you get the horrible email from the person wanting all the review, be kind. Assume the best and try and help them. You never know what's going on in their lives. Yep. And I've had cases where the 1-star review has turned into a 5-star review, and those people are the most rabid, I should say, supporters of your app once they flip over. So anyway, I would just say, try to be kind, to when you're responding to reviews, even if you really are angry, which we've all been, and upset.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Damian, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you online? Damian.fyi, sorry, DAMIAN.fyi. That has all my my links to everything. So awesome.
Damian.fyi. Yep.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well. Great. People can find me on Twitter at LeoGDion. My company is Bright Digit. leogdion@c.am is my Mastodon. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.